Geography, lesson number 4. Today's learning target will be focused on us getting a better understanding that humans may modify their environment to meet their needs. So we're focused today on M for movement. Movement is how people and goods move from one place to another. We'll continue to go over this in the fourth quarter and study it more closely. We need to remember these 5 things when we talk about geography. We're going to focus on the H today, human interactions. Today, we're going to look at several different ways we as humans interact with the environment around us. There are 3 different interactions we will focus on. To modify, this is when we change the environment around us. To adapt, this is when we change ourselves. And to depend, this is when we rely on the environment. Examples of how humans modify their environment: by building roads, building houses, making dams, building fences, cutting down trees. Can you think of any more? Examples of how humans adapt to their environment: wear warm clothes in the winter, wear cool clothes in the summer, build houses with AC and heat, change the clock so it's light out longer in the summer, daylight savings time. Can you think of any more? Examples of how humans depend on their environment: food, oxygen, water to drink, to water plants, to bathe, etc., gasoline for cars, diamonds for jewelry. Can you think of any more? Today, we will be filling out how people, a region or an area, and we'll be filling out these questions. What type of clothing must people wear to live in this community? What type of shelter must people build to live in this community? What food sources are available in this community? And what natural resources are available in this community? I want you to stop and think, how do people adapt to live on or near the water? What must they do? How do people adapt to live at high altitudes? What must they do? How do people adapt to live in very cold climates? How do people adapt to live in the desert? Let's go back to the very first slide. How do people adapt to live on or near the water? Well, in these type of communities, we know that main food sources would be fish, or it might be anything that you can get from the water. How do people adapt to live at high altitudes? That's when they're really high up in the mountains. Well, one thing that you adapt, that you don't need as much oxygen to breathe. People adapt to the changes in the amount of oxygen that is in the air at high altitudes. People living in cold places, one way they adapt is by the type of clothing they wear. People living in deserts, one way they adapt is by the type of clothing they wear, and also their food sources could look differently. We're going to read this article. It's all about Honolulu, Hawaii. The land. Honolulu is on the island of Oahu in Hawaii. The Hawaiian Islands were formed millions of years ago by the power of volcanoes. The Diamond Head crater is a reminder that there were once volcanoes in Hawaii and Honolulu. There are also sandy beaches, hills, and canyons. The climate. The weather in Honolulu stays mostly the same throughout the year. Summers are warm and winters are cool. Natural resources. Because of the great weather and rich soil, many fruits and plants grow here, including papaya, pineapple, nuts, sugar, flowers, and coffee beans. Hawaii also has an excellent groundwater reserve. Natural hazards. There are 5 active volcanoes in Hawaii. A volcanic eruption can cause many problems for the people, animals, and plant life of Hawaii. The lava is dangerous and destroys almost everything in its path. Volcanic gases can be toxic for humans and other animals. So we are going to go back into Shobi to complete this form, and we're going to start completing it together. If we look at what type of clothing would people have to live and wear in Hawaii? Well, it's a warmer climate, so people might be wearing shorts, short sleeve shirts. They would not have to wear boots, so they might be wearing sandals. Now, you're going to go back into Shobi, and I want you to think about what type of shelter must people build to live in this community. Think about, where do people live on the island of Hawaii? Well, people live in houses, and a long time ago, people might live in huts. What were the food sources that were available in this community? Think about Hawaii and what food sources would be available. If we go back to the previous slide, it had talked about what Hawaii grows there. So go back in the article and think about that. And what natural resources are available in this community? Go to that section on natural resources. You can pause the video to fill out your form that is in Shobi, but go ahead and fill out the last 2 parts on your own independently.